It's a really significant day, actually. UKRI has released its first strategy. It's a long-term, ambitious and exciting plan. Really pleased to see many people in the audience to listen to the presentation of the strategy. And obviously, it's great to welcome Dame Ottoline Leyser to Daresbury and to give the chance to actually share the excitement of this strategy, because we think it's a wonderful, wonderful piece of work. It's been a long time in the making, a lot of work, many people involved, but I'd say it's a strong, ambitious strategy, and I will hand over to Ottoline to present some slides, kind of hopefully sharing the excitement.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed, Mark, and thank you to everybody for the warm welcome I've had to Daresbury. I've seen some very exciting things today, and it's very fitting, I think, to be launching this strategy here, and I've got some slides which I think illustrate that, because a lot of what's going on this campus is exactly the kind of thing that we at UKRI think are the priorities for this next phase in the UK's research and innovation journey. So just to get going, I think we have an extraordinary opportunity as a nation. We have an extraordinary track record in research and in innovation, and we have now the opportunity with this government's commitment to research and innovation to make that expertise, that world-leading quality in research and innovation that we have, the core of our economy and our society, to bring everybody with us to build an innovation-led economy to which everybody can contribute and from which everyone benefits. And I think UKRI is a key national asset in delivering on that. We're an unusual organisation internationally because we are a single funding agency that brings together all the disciplines and all the sectors, including not only the disciplinary research councils, the amazing facilities council that Mark runs and is represented so much here on this site, and Research England, which works with the equivalent bodies in the devolved nations to support research through block grants into universities and also their knowledge exchange programs. And then, of course, Innovate UK, the UK's innovation agency. So we have all of that in one organisation working together to build the kind of agile, flexible, connected research and innovation system that we need. And that's crucial for this innovation-led economy ambition, because we're a relatively small country. We have this deep and broad excellence, which very few countries have. And we're investing heavily, but we can never invest the kind of sums of money that we see in the US, in China, and some of the other G8 economies. So we've got to do it better. We've got to do it in a more intelligent way. And I think the chance we have as this relatively small country with a huge breadth and depth of expertise and a single public sector funder that covers all of those parts, that's where we get the chance to do this well, to do this in a fully joined up way. And as I said, this is all enabled by the fact that science and research and innovation in general are moving now to the heart of government. We've seen with this government not only this major increase in public investment in research and innovation over the next spending review period and beyond, but also clear ambition to take our overall R&D investment as an economy to 2.4% and beyond, so that public sector investment has got to leverage in at least 2 times as much in private sector investment to build that really innovation-led economy. And that's underpinned by bringing science into the heart of government through the new National Council for Science and Technology, which is a prime ministerially chaired committee right in the heart of government. And not only has the base budget through which UKRI get their core funding been increased over the next spending review period, but all other government departments with an interest in research and innovation, with an interest in R&D, have had their budgets, their R&D budgets increased too. So right across government, we have a focus on research and innovation for public services, for the economy, and to solve some of the major challenges that we face, both as a nation, but also as a world, globally. And the NSTC has identified the net zero and more wider sustainability goals, the health and life sciences, national security and defence, including the space industry, although that obviously has a much wider range of applications, as those at STFC know only too well. And then data and digitally driven economy, which is also very well represented here on the Daresbury site. So these are the 4 areas that the NSTC has identified as key areas, again, to think about right across government. And this is the key element. We have to join up the thinking across government to deliver in a holistic way all kinds of really quite challenging things, such as net zero, which is not a one-department problem. It's a multi-department problem. Unless we can think in that joined-up way, nothing will change. And I see UKRI, again, then, as this kind of key node in the system, a smart connector that can really join up across government, but also join up across the research and innovation system to understand what's happening and then dynamically target what we do to support these wider goals for the nation and indeed, as I say, globally for the world. And so as this large public sector funder that covers all the sectors and all the disciplines, we can work with partners. We're a node in a very large and complex system. So although we have this wide breadth and depth of reach, we can't do anything without the extraordinary partnerships we need to build with you, with academia, with industry, across government, as I've said, and with our international partners. Our role then, I think, is to be this connector, this node in the system that brings things together and can take both the money that we've been entrusted with, but also the convening power and the catalyzing power that we have to drive forward on this ambitious agenda for the nation. So just, to briefly say something about where we are now, we of course already play this role, but we want to rev up, we want to gear up, we want to take this moment to transform what we do and how we work, to do it better. And I'll get to that shortly. That's the key foundation for our strategy. We have a lot of money, £8 billion a year and rising, and we have multiple tools to deliver that into the system, along with the incentives we can put in place, our convening power and the ability to catalyse activity right across the system, working with you together to deliver on these ambitious goals. So this just sets out very briefly the diversity of our portfolio. I've found over the time I've been doing this job that all of the people I talk to, wonderful, exciting people, really engaged in what they're doing, people tend to know the part of the system they're in. They're a student, they're a fellow, they understand what students and fellows need, but that's 11% of our funding. And then a lot of people in academia really understand and interact with our response mode funding system. The straightforward response mode funding system is 12% of what we do. That comes as a huge surprise to a lot of people. We have a more targeted response mode system as well, so strategic priorities across our councils, for example. Then we fund an awful lot into infrastructure, so QR, and this is just the English block grant investment into English universities, their equivalents in all the other devolved administrations, 21% of our budget, so considerably more money than goes in through those response mode grant programs. And that's a really key element. Our dual support system is a major strength in the vibrancy of our university funding system, because it provides that flexibility that universities have to drive their own strategic priorities. And then we have institutes and infrastructures. Infrastructures obviously of key relevance here on the Daresbury site. Then a whole variety of more innovation-led programs, so the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, bringing together those interdisciplinary consortia to deliver on key industrial challenges, and responsive mode innovation, which I've heard a lot about today, talking to some of the really fantastic SME CEOs that you have on the campus here, run through Innovate UK, and then, of course, the Catapult Centres, which are these institute-like bodies that are supported partly through Innovate UK, but also private sector funding and third sector funding, and or third funding stream, I put it that way. And those catapults are also really important in that join-up that I talked about before. And then, of course, at the moment, we have a significant international fund and a significant amount of money going into COVID-related programs. So huge range of instruments right across the system, and that's the opportunity we have, this portfolio of investments that we can tune dynamically going forward to maximise the potential of the system that we have. And that is then all underpinned by, as I've mentioned already, our vision to create this system where everyone can contribute and everyone can benefit. This is not a system for some special Einsteins living in a shiny box over here. This is a system for everyone. There are a huge range of exciting jobs for a very wide range of people, including the Einsteins. We need those people, but they're only one of the sorts of people that we need. And we have, as UKRI, the unique opportunity to support, to work together with everybody, with you, through our convening and catalysis powers, but also our investments and the incentives we put into the system to foster that kind of system. So this gets me to then our strategy. We've got this great system. How could it be even better? How can it deliver in the way that I've described? And we need to change some things. And the things I think we need to change are highlighted here. We have a competitive system. That's fine. Competition has a really plus side. It encourages everybody to do their best. But if it gets too competitive, and crucially, if the rules for winning are not the right rules, you wind up incentivizing the wrong kinds of behaviors, and you lose a lot of the benefits that I've described for the kind of system that we have. And I think we've gone too far, particularly in academia, in recognizing and rewarding a far too narrow range of things. And I think the focus of that recognition and reward, again, particularly in academia, winds up being beamed down onto a very small number of individuals rather than being a collective goal. A university has a fantastic aspiration for excellence in research, and of course that relies on the excellent research done by the many people who work in the university, but it's not that every single person has to deliver on every single one of the criteria that the university collectively should be delivering on. I'd pick just one example because that issue maps at multiple scales. So I think too narrow rules for winning the competition, too focused on individuals, and the result of that is to lock in these silos between disciplines, silos between sectors, between the academic community and the business and innovation community, because everybody is so focused on delivering on their local set of narrow objectives. The incentives all come from doing that, and that fragments the system in a way that fundamentally undermines its ability to work as effectively as it could. So what we need then is to consider much more broadly the system as a whole, to consider the value of different people, different institutions, different types of activity across the system working together so that the whole is more than the sum of the parts. And we need to build across that then also more capability to withstand shocks, more flexibility to allow that rapid pivot. And that's fundamentally about the resilience of the system. So these are key elements we need to think about. And we, as I said, we need to think then about this portfolio approach where different parts and people and places in the system are doing different things, and collectively you get more than the individual parts. So how does this translate into our strategy? It translates into our strategy through what I am describing as 4 fundamental principles for change. These are the 4 things that we think need to change across the system, and where everything we do as UKRI, but I hope people will think about this much more broadly across the system, these are the things we need to think about and focus on in bringing our system into that much more diverse, connected, resilient and engaged place where I think it needs to be to deliver on its full potential and to achieve the huge ambition we have for that system. So diversity, as I said, absolutely crucial, and not just diversity of people, diversity of places, diversity of types of institution, diversity of ideas. We need the kind of high-risk blue skies thinking, but we absolutely also need the people who take the results of that and establish their generality and move them. I mean, does it also work in humans? That kind of question. All of those things, absolutely crucial. And we need the right range of funding instruments to support that full range of activity that we need. And so I'm saying diversity, I mean it huge, big system, every level in the system. We need to think, have we got the right range of activities here? That's one. None of that's any good unless the system is properly connected up. So you get the benefits of diversity at all of those kinds of scales through collaboration and connectivity. You need to know what else is there. You need to be able to access the things that you can't do. And so connectivity is crucial, and I think it's something we underinvest in because it doesn't look like a thing. It's not sufficiently tangible for us. And so we need to think very hard about how we give people the time and the incentives and the money to create that connected system. And that comes partly, for example, through diverse career paths that support people to move through the system in a dynamic way across their career, which inherently connects it up. So you can see how diversity and connectivity work together. And together they will deliver this resilience. We need to think very hard about that, about the financial sustainability of our institutions, make the difficult choices we need to make so that we're not spreading resources so thinly that everybody's just getting by. Resilience depends on sustainable financial systems, but also that creates then the flexibility to be agile. It's a really important feature in the system. And as I said before, we won't get the benefits out unless what we're doing is deeply embedded in our society, in our culture. Research is such an exciting thing to participate in. It's such a basic human emotion. How does that work? How can I make that better? And we need to capture that more, that curiosity and kind of pioneering spirit that I think pretty much everybody has, and feed that into the system to create the kind of vibrancy that we need, and to make sure that everybody feels part of it and that everybody is clear how they can contribute across that huge range of roles that I've talked about. So all of these things we need to map out across everything that we do, and I've already listed the kinds of things that we do. We invest in people and their careers, in places and infrastructures, in ideas, in innovation, in the impacts of those things on the big global challenges, on seizing the opportunity from the kind of transformative technologies that I've heard so much about today, on the new and emerging sectors in our economy, which are so exciting, and I've also heard about those today. And, of course, we need to map all of these things out in the context of UKRI as an organisation. We ourselves need to be diverse, connected, resilient and engaged, and one of the things I'm enjoying about today is engaging with all of you and trying to understand better what matters to you and how we can support and help you to reach your potential. So all of these things across all of those principles for change will deliver the kind of high-class world-leading system that we want. And as I said before, it's just brilliant to be here in Daresbury to launch this strategy because of the way that everything Daresbury does illustrates exactly the points that I've been trying to make. So I'm going to talk about this very quickly in the context of the people and careers pillar in our strategy. So I could talk about this all day in the context of all the pillars, but just to focus on one, the people and careers, what we're aiming to do in that is to make the UK a really attractive place for people from the UK, but in fact people from around the world, to come and pursue their research and innovation ideas. We want to be the most exciting ecosystem to come to because we have everything that people need to make the most of their careers. And we want, included in that is diversity. It's the full breadth and depth of skilled people and teams that we need for the R&D workforce, and of course the places and so on that they work, but I'm just focusing on the people at the moment. And we need to shift the research culture away then from this narrow focus on a particular sort of output, for example, and really create a system where what's valued is what everybody kind of knows is really the heart of research and innovation that we've slightly lost sight of in our pursuit of rather narrowly defined KBIs. It's about discovery and creativity and innovation and solving problems and delivering impacts. We need to create a system where that is the core, and that's what brings people in. I've said before, and I'll say again, if you ask your nephew what they want to do when they grow up, they're not going to say, I would like to have an H-index of 60, please. They're going to say, I want to go to the moon, I want to cure cancer, I want to save whales, whatever it is they want to do. But that's what matters, and we need to embed that as what matters in our culture. Our incentives have to be around that, not around some arbitrary set of metrics. And through that, I think we can inspire people to come into the system and bring their very many diverse skills and talents to contribute. So what about Daresbury? It really illustrates this cluster principle brilliantly. It's just a wonderful ecosystem of different people with different ambitions, working on different kinds of projects in different kinds of ways, but all working together and benefiting from one another, and the breadth of expertise and skills and talents and ideas and ways of working across the site. It's an amazing site, working with academia, with big companies, with small companies, everything going on. And I had a great round table earlier today with some of the people involved, and one of the grand conclusions to come out of this was more cake. So bringing all of these people together in different permutations and combinations to allow for that free flow of idea, which sometimes can be incentivized by cake, is really important. So tea and cake, crucial principle, I think, and very much in evidence here at Daresbury. And then as I've said, multiple times already now, really demonstrating, really providing a clear line of sight to the many different career options there are in the system is crucial. And I think the apprenticeship program that's running here and actually more widely across STFC is just a brilliant example of that. It's not about boffins, it's about everybody. And there are really crucial roles for everybody. And through that innovation-led economy, we can really create these very high-quality jobs for a very range of people, and bringing the people in to demonstrate that is crucial. And if we want to attract in that private sector investment, it's crucially about that full skill set. That's a key element in driving up the high R&D investment businesses in any place. So apprenticeship is crucial. And then that wider culture shift, I think, is critical. And locally, you have a very good example in the Prosper project that multiple local universities are driving forward to capture, really, the extraordinary talent there is at that early career researcher stage, PhD students, but crucially postdoctoral researchers, to illustrate, again, clear line of sight to the extraordinary range of things people with those kinds of talents can deliver for themselves, but also for the wider economy and for everybody. And I think part of our problem is the deep silos in which our system currently works. People can only see the university context ahead of them, and that visibility of the much wider range of options available, I think, is totally liberating and very exciting. And so this kind of project that makes that clear, I think, is part of this culture change we need in the academic sector to embed it much more broadly across the system. And then, again, really good examples of that wider range of activity from that point of view in the STFC Wonder Initiative, which is reaching out to communities that wouldn't typically have the opportunity to interact with the research and innovation system. And when I say reaching out, this is another one of these many examples where vectors are problematic. We think a lot in research and innovation about unidirectional vectors. We think about research to innovation. We think about, in an outreach context, researchers reaching out. All of this is a multi-directional interaction. Research benefits from innovation. Innovation benefits from research. People benefit from contact with people who currently think of themselves as scientists. Scientists benefit from contact with people who currently don't. And I think we need to think much more multi-directionally in the way we wire up our system and connect it up, and the culture that we need to drive forward that fully connected, diverse system that's delivering for the UK and for the world. And that, in brief, is, I think, the direction in which UKRI needs to go, and what I hope we set out clearly in this strategy. And I'm really excited about working with everybody right across the system to make that a reality. So it's great to be here, and I'm really interested in your ideas about how we might move forward together. Thank you.
Thanks, Ottoline. That was a fantastic, really inspiring introduction. There will be time for questions after the 3 short presentations. So we'll hand over to Paul Vernon, who's head of Daresbury Laboratory, who is going to tell us about this wonderful ecosystem we have here. And as Ottoline says, this is a system, it's an ecosystem bringing together people, technology, science and business on this campus, and actually delivering something fantastic for the UK. So over to Paul.
Thank you, Mark. I'm one of quite a number of people, actually, that have worked for STFC in the past, gone away and done something different and come back. And I had 6 years away, came back in 2020. There was a feeling of unfinished business. And when I came back, one of the reasons why I came back was the advent of UKRI. Because part of that unfinished business was we have a fantastic ecosystem here at Daresbury. But it was very much around what we, STFC, could do to help the businesses. UKRI brought all of the research councils. So it brought biology, medical research, engineering and physical sciences, Innovate UK into that fold. And I saw that very much as an opportunity to do more Daresbury. But to do more Daresbury, I think I need to take you back a little bit to the history. We're celebrating 60 years this year of Daresbury Laboratory. And as you can see, holes in the ground back in 1963, 1964. Steam trains going past the place. The important thing about this is Daresbury is grounded in science. It's grounded in particle accelerators. We had the world's first dedicated synchrotron light source here. Every single synchrotron, there are 170 odd in the world, can trace its genesis back to Daresbury. No drug comes on the market now unless it's been through synchrotrons. So there is a real history in this place of science and innovation, but also computation. Accelerators and computers, the front page of Nature, Nobel laureates, 3 Nobel Prizes have been worked on this site. And back in the 2000s, we went into supercomputers. And this is Daresbury now. So, oh, sorry, I was trying to find the laser. Anyway. Right. Ah, there we go. Thank you. Science and Technology Facilities Council. This is the laboratory. We're actually in this building here. This used to be a Van de Graaff generator. I don't know if anybody did A-level physics, where you had that thing where you put your hand on top of a dome and all of your hair stood up. It would do more if you put your hand on top of that. But anyway, this is the home of the original synchrotron. And over here, we've got a supercomputer. But all of this is new. Because what this place is about is how we translate this science over here into what goes on over here. It's that translation from fundamental science, facilities, and expertise over into businesses, jobs, economic activity, and ultimately impact. And we're really good at it. And we're good at it because it's about collaboration. So that's Daresbury now, but this is what the plan is for Daresbury in the future. There are about 2,000 people working on site at the moment. This is 10,000. And all of this is moving, this is planned, this is moving ahead. So this is the current site. This is the joint venture bit over the road. These are the new buildings you saw when you came in. A decision was made a few years ago that we would take some investment and speculatively invest in property. There's not many companies, organizations investing in property speculatively. But we have confidence in this place that we can do something with it. And Jane's up there, and Jane has a lot to do with this. These buildings here, built without any idea of who was going to be in them, we took the keys over 3 weeks ago, and they're 85% full. To such an extent that we've now got outline planning permission to put another 5 buildings at the top of the hill. This place is buzzing. And it's buzzing because it's about growth and it's about collaboration. In the last 10 years, £278 million invested in companies. But in 2020, when there was a pandemic going on, £24.4 million. And it's about collaboration. So it says there 25% of the companies located at Daresbury to collaborate with STFC. But actually look how many companies are collaborating with STFC. So 25% come here, and as it stands, 53% of companies are collaborating with us. So how does it work? Well, STFC is the guardian of the big stuff. The sorts of huge national scale science facilities that really only governments can afford. So on behalf of UKRI, we design, build, operate these huge facilities in neutrons, lasers, synchrotrons, computers, space programs. But they're not just for academics. The secret with this place is that we make it available to industry. So we've got a long history of particle accelerators here. And guess what? There's a company that's innovating around particle accelerators. Up in the base of the tower is Advanced Oncotherapy that is designed and is now building a unique proton accelerator, which is going to be going into a building in Harley Street. Varian Medical Systems, a vast American company, uses Daresbury to test its radiotherapy systems. So this is about UK science, UK investment in science, enabling industry to create economic impact. And it's not just the big companies. We had a round table earlier on today, and at that round table was Revivacell and Perfectus. These are 2 companies in life sciences. Revivacell are doing amazing stuff around artificial livers. Perfectus Biomed started with 1 person in our ITAC lab and is now over 60 people and acquired an American company last year. These are massive success stories that come from this place. And Rapiscan systems, when you go to the airport, you have your baggage scanned, they're looking at next generation scanning technologies, not with the things that they've got, but using our accelerators, our people, and our expertise. Croda, many of you have heard of Croda, the massive chemical company. They've got a unique R&D facility on this site, did you know that? And they came here because of what Daresbury offers them. And we went and saw them earlier on today. They love being here. They've expanded the space that they've taken and will continue to work with us. They're a chemical company, but one of the things they're doing is they're working with the Hartree Centre using our supercomputer to, within the computer, model new chemicals. Unilever, we've been working with Unilever for years. In fact, I think they were the first customer in the Hartree Centre, our supercomputing centre, where they again are developing new products, new surfactants, new chemicals using the computer. But the interesting thing is they've been working with us since 1987, because at our Harwell site, we've got ISIS, which is the UK's neutron source, which has allowed them to look at the actual properties of the things they make. So at one end of the motorway, we've got them looking at new products in computers, and at the other end, we've got them looking at the real products on our neutron source. So this is the sort of scale that STFC can bring to these problems. And IBM, I can see Peter sat over there. Hi, Peter, welcome. This is the first place that IBM Research are setting up a facility. There's going to be 60 researchers, computational scientists, and engineers here. And they're a component, an absolutely fundamental part of the new Hartree National Centre for Digital Innovation. We, between us, have invested, or are investing, over £200 million in making artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cognitive computing available not to our researchers, but to industry. This is the democratization of artificial intelligence. It is taking these investments by government and by IBM in UK facilities to improve the companies, the businesses, and the impact that we get. We were in the Hartree earlier on today, and we saw a demonstration of the sorts of things that we do. This up here on the right is Ocado's fulfillment center. And those little boxes, they're robots. And they whiz around at unbelievable speed. They will do the average household shop in 5 minutes. But they must pass within 5 millimeters of each other when one of them's headed to the cucumbers and the other one's going for chicken Kiev. And they must do it reproducibly. And if these things crash, it's game over. They have to shut the fulfillment center. And in the Hartree, working with Ocado, we were able to combine traditional computing with quantum computing algorithms, which have allowed this to work seamlessly. The video is mind-blowing with these things whizzing around and picking up food. So this is why we're different, because this sort of thing is not available in Fred's computer shop in Warrington. This is the combination of government investment, UKRI expertise, and industry providing new and innovative solutions. So the Hartree National Centre for Digital Innovation, I included this slide not because there's loads of detail in it, but because of the sectors that we're working across. Now, STFC is known for particle physics and astronomy. This is the sort of areas, all of the areas that we're working in at the moment. There's not a lot of particle physics and astronomy in there because we transfer this technology into these areas. At our round table earlier on today, somebody was saying, well, it would be really good if there was some money to do this. Well, there is. We have a cross-cluster proof of concept fund. So you can apply to us for some money to work with other companies here and with STFC and UKRI. And these are some of the companies that we've worked with. So reaction engines is one of the government's poster children. It's a company that's developing absolutely cutting edge rocket engines, but we've got a joint venture with them now, which came out of this, about reducing carbon in marine engines. Orca is a company that is actually here on site. All of these organizations have had funding to work with us. And that looks good, there's a few up there, but look how many more we've worked with. This is something that we're doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And if you don't know about this, you should come and talk to us, because maybe there are opportunities for you to work with us too. And then finally, one of the things that I wanted to include, because I think this is really important, we work very well with companies and we've got loads of great case studies and impact coming out of it. But we also work on the skills side. And Johnson Matthey is just one of the companies with which we have a joint fellows scheme. So these are people that work between the company and between STFC. They have access to our sites. They have access to our people. They have access to our facilities. And they're working on core projects for batteries, healthcare. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about Daresbury. Because what Daresbury is a microcosm of that UKRI strategy. The reason why I came here is that strategy, because it is that critical mass. It is bringing all of those pieces together into something that will be transformational. And Daresbury isn't the whole story. I wish it was, but as head of lab, I have to say that we are a component, a really important component part of that. And we're the national lab in the north. So if you're a northern-based company and you want to access these sorts of things, we're here to talk to you. So thank you very much for listening. We'll be doing some questions after.
Thanks for great talk. I think it just demonstrates that, you know, that Daresbury really is a great example of an ecosystem that's working incredibly effectively. And I'm really pleased that Paul showed the level of ambition that we have for this place over the coming years. One of the words Ottoline used in her presentation was inspire. So I'm really pleased to be able to welcome Dan Hillier from our public engagement team, who will say a few words about what I think is an absolutely fantastic and wonderful initiative, the Wonder Initiative. So Dan.
So good afternoon, everyone in the room and online. And thank you, Ottoline, for this chance to talk about public engagement and in particular, the Wonder Initiative. So a little STFC public engagement first overall. We have a large and well-established program. We run things through 4 main strands of work. We have a strong grants program for public engagement. We have a number of national projects, national partnerships with agencies such as the Space Agency and the Reading Agency. We have programs of engagement from all of our laboratory sites, and that's where I'm involved. I'm head of those programs. I'm based in Edinburgh. And we also have the public engagement that's carried out by other grant holders, researchers and others who do public engagement as part of their work. As an employer, a relatively large employer, we have a lot of staff involvement. Over 500 staff a year typically are involved in the public engagement. And that's one of the ways, particularly within the national labs, we look at public engagement in terms of how it can support staff in their development of their skills and their confidence more generally. And just a figure at the end there, in a typical year, we have about 500,000 interactions, just to give you a bit of an idea of the scale of activity that we do. So all this work is driven by a strategy which we published in 2016. And for STFC, public engagement is very much about inspiration and STEM. Now, there are other types of public engagement that are important for UKRI, but for STFC, this is where we focus our efforts. And in 2017, we were looking at those 5 aims in the coloured boxes and we were doing, and we were thinking we were doing really, really well on all of them, except one, which is the yellow box, about improving the reach with diverse audiences. And it seemed to us that we were making real no real progress with this particular aim, no real traction in getting any change in this area of work. And we decided we needed to design and start a new initiative to really make the change happen that we wanted to see. So in 2018, we launched the Wonder Initiative. And as you can see here, it's about working with participants from. And I just want to say a little bit about the thinking that went into that and why we went down this route rather than any others that we might have done. So the first thing is that at the time that UCL was developing its work on science capital, which if you're not familiar with, essentially is describing the way that people, particularly children, young people, they have a range of different experiences of science in their life, in the family, in the schools, in the community. If they have a lot of that stuff, it increases the chance that they will go on and do STEM later in life. And if they have less of that stuff in their life, they relate less well to STEM and science, and they might take on this view that it's not for me, it's not for them. So this was an important sort of building block. And another part of the ASPIRE's research was that it found that there's evidence that low science capital is strongly correlated with general high levels of deprivation. This wasn't necessarily a surprise, but this was the really good evidence that this was the case. And that was important for us because there's a lot of good national data and local data about deprivation, and it gave us the means by which we could design and evaluate a program in this area and monitor progress. And the other thing about the approach is 40%. We were not looking at was to move our engagement along the spectrum of deprivation from those people in better off communities to those in the poorer communities, but it's still a large chunk of society. And within that, we know that there are other particular groups who have difficulty getting into STEM or are marginalized. And whilst we haven't directly focused our work on them, we know that they will be there within that 40%. And we expect to see some interesting and improved work with those groups. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the changes that we've made now on the initiative at 3 levels, and starting at the strategic or the top level about the initiative as a whole. The first thing, this is a long-term commitment. We didn't go into this saying, oh, we'll do a pilot, and 6 months later we'll see what we do. We recognized that we had to be in this for the long game, at least as long-term as the strategy. Secondly, as Ottoline has talked about, it's about collaboration, co-design, getting that interaction in both directions, and we try to make that everything that we do with Wonder at all levels. Thirdly, we want to create an open community of PE practitioners who work in this way. So if someone comes along, here's that Wonder initiative, they want to get involved, they've got something to contribute, or they want to learn about what we've learned, then we welcome them in. We haven't got a closed shop about this. We're trying to build a growing community of PE people who want to work in this way. The third thing, as I've already mentioned, about evaluation, we're already trying to improve our evaluation within STFC, and it became really obvious within Wonder this was going to be very important to, as I said, both designing and monitoring our progress with the initiative. And lastly, we wanted to see these changes happening across all those different strands of our programme, particularly the ones where the PE teams have direct leverage. The people who are receiving other research grants and so forth, we have less leverage over how they work, but hopefully by the work of the Wonder Initiative, we can help influence what they do. So the second level I'm going to come down to is something that's happening at the national laboratory sites, and in particular, how we've changed the way we build relationships and partnerships to achieve things under the initiative. So the first one is in Edinburgh, and this was around when the outbreak of COVID, and like everyone in engagement, we had to stop all our face-to-face activities, and we did move to an awful lot of online work, but not exclusively online work. And this one example I have is where we made connections with the local food charity in Edinburgh that was sending food packages to low-income families, and we put together packs of STEM resources that these families could receive along with their food parcels, and it was maintain their enrichment, their education at home, and generally help their home life through the lockdowns. So that was a response mode thing, to just changing circumstances and doing something differently with a new partner. The second one, the Rutherford Appleton Laboratory, is a bit more proactive. If you know it, it's a very big site, lots of people working there, big, huge facilities. And we wanted to work with really quite small community groups in Oxford, in these more deprived areas. We didn't really have a way into those communities. but we did have a relationship with a local science festival called IF Oxford, connected with them, and they made those introductions to those small community groups. And now, 2-3 years on, we're working with those community groups regularly as part of the Wonder Initiative, and it shows how you just need to find the right partners to make those connections across the ecosystem. And the third example is here at Daresbury, and this is the most strategic approaches, I think, of all the sites. In particular, I pick out here the publishing of the Sci-Tech Daresbury Talent and Skills Strategy. That's 2018, I think it was. And that really brought together an integrated public engagement into the whole work of the campus. The most recent sort of benefit of this is we've created a new house supported by Halton Borough, which is going to improve our work with schools in the Halton area. But that's a really great example of the strategic working that certainly helps public engagement. Okay, the last example is at the sort of most granular level, and just looking at one particular programme here at Daresbury, the Talking Science programme, and how we've made changes here. Now, it's been running for over 20 years. It's a fairly typical traditional talks programme, takes place in this space. In fact, its 20th anniversary was in 2018, and unfortunately in that year we learned that this lecture theatre had to be closed down for refurbishment. So Wendy, who runs the programme, who was thinking hard about what Wonder might mean for her work and what she could be doing, she decided she would take the talks and the events out of the lecture theatre into the communities around the local area. So she did that for a year while this place was refurbished. And we were allowed back in again in 2019. And in that year, Wendy said so she would run the programme in a mixed way. There'll be some talks on site and some out in the community. And I'm just going to show you what's happened to the profile of the people that came to our events when this happened. So the first thing is that chart there shows you the socioeconomic profile of people who live 30 minutes drive from where we are right now. The blue colours represent people in the poorer deciles of the community, of the population and the Wonder target, if you like. And as you can see, there's a sort of somewhat over-represented against the national figures, 50, nearly 55% in those Wonder areas here compared to 40% nationally. So just going to show you what the profiles of the people who attended the events when we ran them back in the lecture theatre. And there you can see the mismatch. Just very small numbers from the Wonder community, and all those people from the wealthy areas already got that good science capital, or probably doing lots of interesting STEM stuff, very well represented. And then running in parallel, there were events out in the community, and this was the profile that we had. So it just shows that you can actually make a radical difference if you're prepared to think and do things differently. And in some ways, what I've said is quite simple. We ran them off-site rather than on-site. But I just want to say something about the way someone like Wendy works. And there's an awful lot of effort and thought goes into making that actually happen. If you listen to Wendy talk about how she ran the programme, it's one thing after another she's changed to make this difference. But it does take a commitment, but it can be done. Okay, last slide. I just want to sort of zoom back out again and how we're doing overall with the initiative. And we talk about things in terms of reach and outcomes. So on the reach side, the table shows that over the last, those 3 years of the report that we've just had in, the interim report, things of participant rates by Wonder communities has risen from 31% to in the 40s. Just say a couple of things about the table. Obviously, 2020 was a year of COVID, and there's loads to unpick there about that particular number in that year. But also, almost more importantly, is 2018. I've said that's the baseline year, but it's the baseline year because it was when we had reasonably good data to say we could start monitoring. In fact, we were already doing things in 2016 and 2017 going in this direction. And I'm sure the numbers, if we had them for those years, would be much lower. And so there really has been a significant change across those 3 or 4 years to change the profile of the groups that we're interacting with. And the second point is it's not all about who we reach. The quality of that engagement still needs to be good. We monitor our outcomes, monitor our activities against about 10 outcomes. I picked 3 here because I think they're particularly interesting. So one is a sort of a general satisfaction rating, sort of customer satisfaction thing. And as you can see, whether the events involve people from Wonder areas or non-Wonder, we've got good satisfaction rates, and people generally have a good time when they come to the event. As you go down through some of the other outcomes, you start to see a split and a difference, that you get a better response from the non-wonder than from the wonder audiences. Now, I'd still say these are good responses, all good responses, but there is a split opening up. My reason for saying this, and I'll show you all these things, is because I think Wonder's doing a fantastic thing, but we haven't got all the answers, and there are some things that we're uncovering where things are still not quite right, and we still need to make improvement. So lastly, what's next? Well, we've got a fuller report coming out this summer, which will include just a little bit more data from the audiences, but also interviews with the project leaders and their insights into what's been happening over the last 3 years or so. There will be 2 new public engagement strategies, one from UKRI and one from STFC, and they will undoubtedly shape how we go forward. I'm excited and confident that Wonder will be part of this, but it may take a new direction on the back of those strategies. And one thing that's particularly exciting is the chance that in 23 and 24, we're looking to repeat the major open weeks at this site and at Rutherford, and where we will be bringing all that learning about the Wonder Initiative into those large-scale public engagement events. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Great talk. I mean, I think this is inspiring. I mean, the idea is to inspire people, but the whole concept's inspiring, and the team do a great job on the Wonder Initiative, and it's really, really exciting. So I'm really pleased we're able to present today. We now have 40 minutes for a quick Q&A session. So the speakers will take their seat, and we also have a virtual audience. Well, I can't see the virtual audience. I believe they're there. So we are going to take online questions as well. So, oh, I don't need that. Okay. There's a mic here. This mic should also be working. We are the Science and Technology Facilities Council, so the technology sometimes works. So I'd say it always works. Right. So probably, Patrick, should we start off with a question virtually, and then we'll go around the room. Oh, okay. Very good. All right. Any questions from the audience? The back there first. Yeah. One second. Yeah.
Thank you. Jo Lappin, I'm the Chief Executive of the Cumbria LEP, and clearly I'm very interested in building the high growth business sectors of the future. And the question really is, when you look at the expenditure breakdown, it seems very, very heavily focused on research and limited expenditure on what I would call the irrigation of the business community. So really interested in seeing how that's going to change over time. How do you see it changing?
Absolutely. So over this next spending review period, the budget for Innovate UK is the fastest growing area of our overall budget. That's the first thing to say. But the second thing to say is that expenditure through the research councils is massively business collaborative. So there are literally thousands of those grants that I mentioned in the response mode funding, for example, that have business collaboration. So I think it's very difficult actually to look at our budget and say this fits for research and this fits for innovation, because when you're trying to build that joined up system, exactly who benefits from the money that goes into one particular place is very difficult to track at some level. We have to try, because those are obviously important KPIs for us. But I think that's something that I'm interested in doing with this strategy and altogether going forward, is to bring everybody together to get everybody behind the idea that what we're trying to do is drive up overall investment in research and innovation in a very ambitious way, from the current 1.7% to 2.4% and beyond. So the size of the pie is growing, and we need to collaboratively focus on growing the pie as quickly as we can, rather than worry too much about our slice of the pie. And I'm not for a moment accusing you of doing that, but that's the key question. The question is, how do we grow the pie as quickly as possible? And from that,
everybody benefits. And it's really important that we focus, I think, on that opportunity. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So I have a question down at the front. So just wait for the mic. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Hi, thank you very much for all the talks. They've been very informative. So I'm Dr. Jess Boyland. I'm from Manchester. I'm a UKRI Future Leader Fellow and also here on behalf of National Association for Disabled Staff Network. So there's two elements to my question. You spoke quite a lot about attracting people in to both academia and industry. I'd like to know what in the strategy is going to focus on retention. And this is particularly important for those underrepresented groups. So we know that there's a leaky pipeline. So what can you do to address that? And how will co-creation form part of that? Thank you.
That's a really wonderful question. Anybody else is very free to leap in if they want to. So one of the things that I think is very important in the context of attraction and retention is that at the moment, I actually think the definition of what's in and what's out is extraordinarily unhelpful and anyhow not how we should be thinking about things. If we're trying to build a really embedded research and innovation system, I already have some difficulty with the idea that you're in, you're retained, you're out, therefore you're lost. But moving beyond that, nonetheless, there is a real core to your question about how we ensure that those people making extraordinary contributions to research and innovation in multiple different ways are valued, their careers are supported and developed, and that they can move across and through the system in ways that meet their ambitions and their changing priorities as they go through their lives. And I think, again, for me, by now everybody says I say system too often, but I think part of the problem we have, and we've had traditionally, actually comes back down to that idea that our whole way of thinking about this is very individually focused. Research is kind of conceptualized in our current climate as a thing that's to do with individuals. And when we do that, we lose track of and lose sight of those much wider communities in which people work. And absolutely then the opportunity to capture the benefits of the diversity of understanding and expertise across that, and the benefits of co-creation. And that's co-creation of ways of thinking about the system that work for everybody. The systemic inequalities that we see in our system are not about a large number of biased individuals. They are about a system that doesn't work for the full range of people for whom it needs to work because of the norms, the incentives, the ways of working that we have embedded in that system over a very long period of time. And that's where co-creation becomes so important, because we need to take on board the many different people and the many different needs they have and see how we can create a system that benefits from that diversity rather than excludes key parts of it. That was a very high level answer rather than a specific one. And I've got to say that this strategy is a very high level strategy. It's not a delivery plan. There are no KPIs. This is the philosophy that will underpin all our actions and our delivery plans going forward. And I'm really looking forward to working together with all of those communities to do the best we can for everyone.
Paul or Dan, don't know if you had anything to add, Dan.
Yeah. So this is retention is outside my remit really in STFC, but in public engagement we do feel this acutely, because if you're standing in front of a group of people, school students or something, and you're trying to encourage them to come into the system, then you really want to be confident the system is going to be welcoming and they're going to find a good place there. So it's, I'm not in the place to make all those changes, but we do feel it every time we're with a group that we're saying that come into this world, but we want that world to be welcoming when they get there.
Yeah, very good point. Paul?
I showed you ambitions for 10,000 people on this site. We need to attract. Yeah. One of the things that we can't afford to do is exclude anybody. No, this is about, I'm a person who lives by mantras, and one of them is the right person, the right place, the right time. And we need to make sure, and I think this strategy helps us enormously with that. It's how we implement that. It's attracting in the right people to the right place at the right time and making sure that UKRI is aligned completely with that.
Thank you. I mean, really, really good answers. And I think Daresbury is a really interesting example of this because we have an ecosystem, well, not a system, an ecosystem. But actually, of course, Daresbury is located in a particular region and actually reaching out into that wider community and bringing that community in is absolutely key for us. So a good system-laden answer. Yes.
Hello, I'm Andy Cooper. I'm the Academic Director of the Materials Innovation Factory at the University of Liverpool. So firstly, I really like the vision. I think it's an excellent vision. Completely support the diversity sentiments I think is needed. Also, agree with the idea that the dual funding stream of QR and competitive funding is a good strength for the UK. I agree with that. My question, I guess, is there any orthogonality there? Having just sat on a REF sub-panel, it seems to me that elements, at least, of the REF are more driven to promote status quo. It definitely drives behaviour quite strongly, I would say. So I guess my question is, do we need to evolve REF, and if so, how?
I think that one's for you, Ottoline.
Yes, so as you may know, we're currently reviewing the REF in a programme called FRAP, which Future Research Assessment Programme. My problem is that FRAP stands for fluorescence recovery after photo bleaching, if you come from where I come from. But anyway, never mind. FRAP, in my new world, is about REF reform. And I absolutely agree that, everything I said maps hugely onto what we need to think about in the REF. The REF is a massive incentive lever that we have. And one of the things I find really interesting about it is that at the moment, if you sat down and read the rules and you looked at what people had to submit, you wouldn't think it was having the, quite extraordinarily powerful and I think negative impacts on individual researchers that it is. It's supposed to be about assessing institutions. It covers outputs, but that's actually quite a small proportion nowadays of the overall thing. There's the impacts and the environment statement too, and the environment statement includes all of the things that I've talked about as really important, but partly because of the history, and we're back to kind of, food chain assembly and ecosystems, if you want to do the comparisons, partly because of the history and partly because of the wider cultural issues, the result is that individual academics feel under massive pressure to deliver a particular sort of output in a particular time frame, and it's not at all helpful to the kind of system in which we need to work and to the kind of system that does retain all the right kinds of people we need to retain, because it's a fabulous and exciting place to be. So I think that will be a crucial lever as we go forward, recognizing that the importance of that dual support framework for the way that our really world-class universities are funded.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a really, really interesting question and a great answer as well. Anyone else? Yes, back there in the middle, and then we'll come down. I can't read name tags from here, unfortunately.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the brilliant presentations so far. I actually work for the NHS. My name's Chris Carlin, and I grew up a couple of miles away from here, so Daresbury is very familiar with me. I suppose that the point I wanted to make is that, I really salute the effort you're making in terms of trying to reach out to those sort of disenfranchised communities. It's really what my work's about. So you may be familiar with the work of Professor Michael Marmot, whose work's all about the wider determinants of health. And Daresbury and STFC and UKRI, you're actually anchor institutions as well in the communities where you're based. So, I've been blessed in that pre-pandemic, in the before times. I got to work with Wendy and Phil Day based here on the site. And we've done some brilliant outreach work into some of the poorest communities in the country, actually. Just a mile away as the crow flies is an estate called Windmill Hill that has 40% child poverty. It's one of the most deprived places in the UK. So the more we can reach into those communities, you're having much more of an impact on not just on people's education and aspiration, but actually on their day-to-day health. So one of the wider determinants of health is being connected, having a sense of purpose, having a good education, having hope for the future. So I just wanted to salute you really and say you're probably bringing a lot more than you realise. And, you know, if I can help in any way, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. not a question, but a really great statement. I don't know if you wanted to comment, Dan.
Well, I appreciate those comments, and I think Phil, who's in the room, probably appreciates them even more than I do, because Phil's team have been doing brilliant work over the last 3 years, and yeah, it was interrupted to some extent by COVID, but not too much, and hopefully we can do much more of the same as things improve on that front.
Brilliant. So I've got.
I would just you know, completely agree with that, and yes, I think it's absolutely crucial to recognise the relationship between lifelong health issues and these much broader issues, and that sense of purpose is something that I think research and innovation can bring to everyone, and it's really exciting and important. And it's not just purpose; it's agency. I as an individual have tools to understand my world and to work, to live through the kinds of uncertainties we live through. And if we can embed that sense of purpose and sense of agency across society through engagement with research and innovation, that I would be very, very happy.
You are happy, I hope. We'll take one from the front, and then we have one virtual question.
Hi there. Everyone hear me? I probably don't need a mic.
It's been broadcast offline, so onto the across the internet.
Thank you. Hi, I'm John Whaling, the Innovation Lead for the Liverpool City region. Fantastic, thank you very much. Genuinely inspiring. I wasn't aware of the talent programs, and that was useful, nor that 3 Nobel Prizes were co-created here. My question is about where you see the role of place in the execution of the strategy. Clearly, we all want scale in terms of investment and private investment. We certainly also want a longer-term structured relationship approach to course co-creation and investment. We already have a superlative relationship with Daresbury and indeed Harwell, but as a place we have a critical mass, and clearly within levelling up, etc. context, where do you see that fitting in a kind of longer term, high scale context? Thank you.
Ottoline first, and then Paul afterwards.
Well, I'll fill the rest of the day with.
Yeah, so I think to me this goes back to this diversity question. Actually, I think a lot of and REF at some level, if you're thinking about it from a research starting point, which you know is only one place to start, but the REF was fundamentally about concentration, explicitly and fundamentally about concentration, and I think that's not the right model for the 21st century. We need diversity with collaboration. We need different institutions in different parts of the country to be doing different things, and then collectively we are, as I say, more than the sum of the parts. So that does include some large institutions doing everything. That's one of the diverse things that we need, but also small institutions doing something in particular, and also a diversity of types of institutions. So Daresbury is a very different thing from a university, and mapping that right out into the innovation space. There's also a very exciting set of different businesses that are really high growth opportunities driven, I would say largely, but not entirely, by the kind of data digital revolution, where the huge anchor institution is not really the requirement anymore, because you can build a kind of cluster of relatively small dynamic SMEs without scale in that capital S sense. So I think where does place fit in? It fits in crucially because we absolutely need to ensure that the benefits from a research and innovation-led economy are fully shared right across the country. That's absolutely crucial. Again, also to the kind of inequalities agenda more generally. But that doesn't mean everybody needs to be the same. It precisely means all the places need to be different, and they need to celebrate and recognize their difference and build on their strengths, so that collectively we are, as a country, able to, be major players in areas such as quantum technologies, but not through every institution doing it brilliantly, but some institutions doing this part, some institution. It's that really carefully thought through diversity with collaboration that will drive the place agenda, I think.
Cool.
You know me, John. I think Daresbury has a really important part to play in Liverpool City region. We're on the innovation board, Massimo and I and Alison Kennedy. We're working with Mark Basnett to try and bring what we've got to the top innovative companies in Liverpool City region. It's not just about the proximity though. You know, UKRI is the biggest funder of research and innovation within UK government. We have a national remit. So I think we need to explore very carefully how we use what we're doing with our geographical footprint, but spread it out further. Barbara, sat next to you, heads up our clusters activity. And I think clusters are going to be really important into the future in how we spread the goodness, if you like. We've got our health tech cluster here, Phil Carville's somewhere. We launched the digital tech cluster last year, which is just going phenomenally well. We're about to launch a space cluster, and we're really closely looking at how we can do a materials cluster with our colleagues in EPSRC. So I think that allows, if you think of it almost as skins of an onion, you know, we've got our incubation here, we've got the wider campus, we've got our business development, we've got a cluster activity which spreads out way beyond the geographical footprint of Daresbury Laboratory and Rutherford Appleton Laboratory and the Astronomy Technology Centre. And we're even looking at what we can do with our underground laboratory in Boulby as a means of economic growth in that region. I think there's a really important role for us to play.
Thanks, Paul. And we have a question from the ether.
Yes, indeed. There was lots of interest in the place questions online, so I'll leave those ones. A specific question: what can businesses do to help make the case for more public investment in R&I in the UK?
What can businesses do? Go and tell the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And that's quite serious, actually. I mean, that business campaign is way more effective and powerful than those of us who have spent their careers benefiting from public sector investment in research and innovation. Going along saying, can I have more money, please, is not nearly as powerful as going along saying, can they have more money, please? And this is, you know, this gets back to this grow the pie prerogative. I think we will do much better as a community if we're arguing for money for other parts of it than we will if we're arguing for money for our part of it. And we can do that with our hands on our hearts because we know that all of us will benefit and the country will benefit from that investment.
Thank you. Yes, over there. Hard work if you're carrying a microphone.
Hi, I'm Nicola Heron from the Medicines Discovery Catapult. So within life sciences, which is clearly one of the key areas of interest, the medical research councils, sorry, the medical research charities and the NIHR are also a really important part of the ecosystem. So what's your vision for how that all connects?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, I mean, across government, and NIHR is another government funder, essentially. We work very closely with them and that works very well. The medical space is altogether extraordinarily interesting because it is a huge area of investment, and the life sciences sector in general is a massive growth area for the UK as well. So it's a really interesting ecosystem with many different funders and many different organizations delivering the kind of impact from the research and innovation system. It's also an area that really leads the way in the context of wider engagement. There's an awful lot of patient involvement in which is fantastic and really, I think, helps anchor the system in the people that it's initially primarily trying to help, which is brilliant. What I think is crucial for that whole system and why I think UKRI and MRC have a unique role to play is absolutely connecting up across the disciplines and across the sectors. So the transformations in health that we'll see will not only originate in the life sciences, that's a really important element of it, but they will also originate in the physical sciences, and we've heard lots of fabulous examples of that today, in the social sciences, and in the interactions between our understanding of people and the social sciences more widely, and the digital and tech industry, you know, the wearable tech, there are huge opportunities to transform healthcare and to make it truly about healthcare rather than the focus on disease treatment, and join it all up. Connectivity, really crucial. And so I see MRC as having a key role in the system precisely because it's more straightforwardly networked immediately across disciplines and across sectors, and therefore has an important role to play in leveraging that with the other major thought leaders and funders across the system, really to transform the life science sector to take full advantage of the 21st century interdisciplinary opportunities.
That's a great answer. I mean, that connectivity between physical, I mean, something I'm passionate about is the connectivity between physical sciences and life sciences, and actually bringing the power of some of the physical sciences to bear on understanding fundamental issues around life sciences. And that is happening through UKRI. So it's a huge opportunity. And it's great that it's happening. I saw in the middle there. Hello? Down here at the front. It's always the furthest point from where you are. That's a rule of life.
You need that Ocado, you need an Ocado robot to whiz you to the right place at the right time.
I'm Steve Bagshaw. I'm a non-exec director of CPI, part of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, and I spent the last year on the vaccine task force. And I'm going back to last summer at Wimbledon when there was a standing ovation for scientists at Wimbledon on the Saturday. I wondered talking about public engagement here and the sort of various levels of public engagement, how we could, or how you see from the different perspectives. And by the way, the wonder was just fabulous. That was just a great input you gave us there. How might we build on what happened there, and particularly in educating not just the 40%, but also actually the decision makers of today, as well as tomorrow's scientists? Because I think I just feel this is a tremendous moment for us with a science story unlike any we've ever had before.
Yeah, Dan, do you want to go have first dibs at this?
I'll have a first go, and I'll say something that I often say on this point, that which I think maybe you're getting at as well, that perhaps surprise at the level of support for science that has been manifested, maybe also some concerns about people who don't have that same level of trust that has manifested itself over the last couple of years. But I think that in general, the trust levels in science have generally been good. And I'm generally optimistic about public support for science. And I think it probably has benefited over those last few years. So I don't see this as, although you hear the sort of the worst case stories from time to time, I take a cup half full about it generally, that in this country, I mean, look at the vaccine take-up rate in this country. I think we are in a pretty healthy position in most respects. So it's not a crisis point at all.
Ottoline.
Yeah, I suppose my framing, we have learned a huge amount from the pandemic, and it's been, there are two elements to the vaccine story that I think are particularly impressive. One of them, just the whole way that as things rolled out across the pandemic, you could see science happening in real time. And it was, oh dear, this is a new virus. We have no idea what it's about. We're going to guess based on similar viruses that we know something about. Here we have some more data. We can refine our ideas. It's that real time on the TV every night progress from we have no idea what's going on to we have ways to navigate the uncertainty in this system. Not we have the answers, but we have ways to navigate the uncertainty. And that, I think, was incredibly powerful in illustrating what science is. It's not the answer. It's a really powerful way to navigate the uncertainty. And that's brilliant. And if we can embed that going forward, I think that would be super helpful. And I have an anxiety that we'll flip back into "don't worry, science will save us," which is not the narrative that actually works. The other, just quickly, point that I think was so powerful, I felt it really personally, actually, going to get my first AstraZeneca shot, was that collective effort. It's not just the brilliant people who devised the thing in the first place. It was everything in between, all the work that you guys on the vaccine task force did to make sure that, you know, there were volunteers in high-vis jackets standing outside the GP surgery to usher me in so I could get that vaccine. And it's that huge national collective endeavor to solve a really pressing problem that I think is also something that we can hopefully harness, recognizing that that's built on investment in completely blue skies, wacky science 10 years ago.
I mean, just to add something around the synchrotron story, in fact, so Diamond Light Source, UK's national synchrotron, in the first few months of the pandemic was actually understanding the structure of the virus. And I think in the first 2 months, 90% of the structural biology and understanding of the spike proteins on the virus were actually done in the UK at the Diamond Light Source. So we do have that scientific capability in the UK to act fast when needed to. We don't always act fast, but most of the time we do. But I think that's just a really good example. Again, connectivity between physical sciences and life sciences, and it was they did amazing work, colleagues on Diamond. I think a question up there.
Thank you. Hi, Anthony Holland, Provost Chancellor of Research and Impact, University of Liverpool. Thank you for the excellent presentations today. I want to talk a bit more about inclusivity and culture change. I'm really delighted by the path you've set UKRI on. I think we all recognise how difficult culture change is, even in one university, let alone across a whole ecosystem, as you're describing. Delighted that you've highlighted Prosper. We set about Prosper a few years ago from Liverpool and with other universities in the N8 to really tackle a deep standing problem around fairness for postdocs, but also opportunities for interfacing with industry and so on. So as it were, we've taken a risk on that and it's working out very well. The kind of changes you're now looking for in terms of team research, de-emphasizing the traditional PI role, we think is really exciting. And in Liverpool, as I'm sure in many universities, we want to have a really good hard look at how we can make that work. But I think we need to recognize we don't know exactly what's going to work really well at the same level of world-leading activity that we have now. And that means we're going to have to take risks, which is fine. But my question is, I'll get there, we can only do that if we can work closely with funders, including all the research councils, in testing out some of the new approaches. And I have a concern that your brilliant and very hardworking colleagues are already very overstretched. And I'm not sure we know how your organizations will work with us in lockstep to take some risks in this area. So my question is, have you thought about how you're going to help us do that?
So I hope we're all going to help each other. And, you know, it's one of the things that I find most frustrating almost. You know, we have fantastic stuff going on right across the system. I don't want to overemphasize the degree to which it's broken, because it's delivering brilliantly in all kinds of ways, but it's under huge pressure, and everybody is under huge pressure and doesn't have enough time, whether that's people in my staff in UKRI or colleagues out in various parts of the university system. Somehow or other, we've got to create the space to get off that kind of hamster wheel so that we can harness the benefits of the fact that we can all help each other to work together better. And so I think you're right, we're going to have to take risks. We're going to have to prioritize quite ruthlessly to do something different, which is a very frightening thing to do. I've got to say that, again, one of the benefits of UKRI is we have the 9 constituent councils, all of whom are wonderful, all of whom have good connections into their communities over many years of building those up, and are able to do the experiments that you talk about. So, we've got a lot of experiments running across UKRI, and we can share that expertise. And although there isn't perfect transferability from one discipline to another, there's enough but I think we can absolutely learn from one another. From EPSRC has run some very innovative calls, the New Horizons program, which are double-blinded, for example. I'm very keen on moving away from the current requirement for a single PI, and I think NERC are beginning to, the Natural Environment Research Council, beginning to trial something on that. And then there are some, again, kind of looping back to your time problem, we are massively constrained by the lovely JES system, which we are very busy replacing. But it's a big IT replacement project, which of course takes time. So many of the things that we would like to do, computer says no. I mean, it trivially, computer says no in the most, you cannot believe. Yeah, and at the same time, all the people out in universities receiving this kind of annoying automated emails. There's just so much wrong with it. So we're getting rid of it. It will be gone hopefully by the end of next year. And Duncan Wingham's doing an amazing job of replacing that. And all the way through that project, they crop up exactly this. Oh my goodness, we could do this differently. And just little things right across the system like that will both free up time to allow people to do things differently and create the tools so that we can. Then we need the good research hub, which we're setting up to capture all of the wonderful experiments people are running across the system so we can share good practice.
I'm sure colleagues in universities can believe the JES system constrains us hugely as it constrains you, and absolutely the reason we're trying to and will change that. I think we have time for just one last question. Yes, over there. I hope you're wearing a Fitbit.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm Mandy Dixon from the Northern Health Science Alliance, or the NHSA. We've done some calculations in 2020 that show that the amounts invested in spent on health research in the north is approximately £21 a person, compared to about over 60 down in London, Oxford, Cambridge. And I think that's a huge difference for an area that suffers from poorer health up in the north. And we know that cluster organisations such as the Northern Health Science Alliance, the Midlands Engine, etc., play a really important role in that connectivity that you're talking about, but also in driving that R&D growth. What does the strategy have? How do you see these cluster organisations supporting the strategy, and how does you think the strategy might support these cluster organisations to support UKRI achieving what you're trying to do?
Gosh, so I mean, clusters are crucial, as we've heard in the context of STFC, and I'm not familiar with the particular ones that you've mentioned, but connectivity is a core element of everything that we need to do and think about. And existing clusters are inherently, their job at some level is about connectivity. They work because of that connectivity. So linking into existing clusters is crucial. In the context of health, particularly, we're back to the comment of a previous question, which is that it's quite a broad and fragmented landscape, and I don't know quite what counted as health research on your data, but certainly NIHR is probably a major chunk of that, with whom we work very closely, but their remit is very different from ours, and so I'm guessing that what needs to happen is a deeper engagement with your clusters so that we understand the issues that are facing you, and we can then figure out how best to put together the jigsaw of funding that there is across the health space to make sure that those priorities are being met as best we can. But I would need to see the details to know for sure.
Okay, thanks, Ottoline. I think we're going to have to wrap up, because we're already a few minutes late. So thanks, everybody, and I think we should thank the panelists again for a really lively and interesting discussion.